I'm a 911 operator, and a call I answered turned my whole life upside down. I was working the night shift when a call came through around 2 in the morning. A woman's voice came through barely above a whisper. Please help me. There's an armed robbery happening at Kelvin Jewelers on 5th Street. I'm hiding in the back office. I could hear the terror in her voice, and I immediately started gathering information while signaling to dispatch. Okay, stay calm and stay quiet. How many people are in the store? She whispered that there were 3 employees, including herself, and 2 customers, who'd been looking at engagement rings when the robber came in. Is he armed? She said yes. He had a weapon and had already fired a warning shot into the ceiling. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. I told her police were on their way, and I needed her to stay on the line with me. I could hear her breathing getting faster, and I kept talking to her in the calmest voice I could manage. You're doing great. Help is coming. Can you tell me where everyone is right now? She said the robber had the other 4 people lined up at gunpoint near the display cases and was forcing them to empty the jewelry into a bag. She'd managed to slip away when he was distracted and lock herself in the back office. I asked her name and she said Ashley. Okay, Ashley, you did the right thing. Just stay hidden and stay quiet. Then I heard shouting through the phone and Ashley gasped. What's happening? I asked. She whispered. He's yelling at them. He sounds really angry. He's hitting one of the customers. I could hear crashing and glass breaking. I checked with dispatch and they said police were still 8 minutes out. 8 minutes felt like forever. Is there another way out of the office? I asked. She said no, just the one door that led back to the main store. Another crash and then a loud bang. Ashley screamed and then immediately covered her mouth. Oh my God, he fired again. I asked if anyone was hit and she said she didn't know. She couldn't see from where she was hiding. The shouting got louder and I could hear the robber screaming about how they were taking too long. Ashley was crying now. He's going to kill them. Please tell me the police are almost here. I checked again and they were still 6 minutes away. More shouting and the sound of display cases being smashed. Ashley whispered, one of the other employees just told him about the safe in the back. He's making them open it. My heart sank because I knew that meant he was going to come to the back office where Ashley was hiding. Ashley, is there anywhere in that office you can hide? A closet or under a desk? She said she was already under the desk. I heard footsteps coming toward the back and keys jingling. He's coming back here, Ashley whispered, her voice shaking. He's going to find me. The door to the back area opened and I could hear him forcing someone to show him where the safe was. Heavy footsteps moved around. Someone was crying. The robber kept yelling at them to hurry up. Then I heard him say the safe was in the manager's office. That's where I am, Ashley breathed. That's this room. I heard the office door slam open and Ashley let out a small gasp. Get out from under there right now, the man yelled. I could hear Ashley scrambling and things falling. Ashley, stay on the line with me, I said desperately. Heavy footsteps moved across the room. Then the man started yelling clearly into the phone for the first time. Who the hell are you calling? Give me that phone. I felt my entire body go cold because I recognized that voice immediately. It was my husband's voice. My husband was robbing this jewelry store. My finger hovers over the mute button and I can't move it. I can't move anything. My whole body just stops working like someone unplugged me. The voice coming through my headset is the same voice that told me he loved me before I left for work tonight. The same voice that laughs at stupid videos on his phone while we eat dinner. The same voice that's now screaming at Ashley to give him the phone. I hear Ashley crying and begging him not to hurt her. Her voice gets farther away, and then I hear the phone being grabbed. My husband's breathing fills my ear, harsh and fast and angry. He demands to know who I've told about the safe. His voice is different from I've ever heard it, full of rage and panic, but it's definitely him. I would know that voice anywhere. He has no idea he's talking to me. He thinks I'm just some random 911 operator. My hands start shaking so bad I almost drop the headset. I force myself to breathe and remember my training. I have to keep him calm. I have to save those people. I make my voice steady and professional even though my insides are twisting into knots. I tell him police are on their way and his best option is to leave the hostages unharmed and exit the building. My voice sounds strange to my own ears. Too calm, like I'm reading from a script. I pray he doesn't recognize it the way I recognized his. There's a pause and I hold my breath. Then he swears. A string of words I've never heard him use. I hear crashing and the sound of glass breaking. He's throwing things, smashing display cases. Ashley is crying in the background and I can hear her trying to muffle the sound. More crashes, more breaking glass. I realize he's trapped now. Police are coming and he has nowhere to go. This isn't just a robbery anymore. It's a hostage situation. My husband is holding innocent people at gunpoint. The man who kisses me goodbye every morning is threatening to kill strangers. My supervisor Miranda appears at my station. She asks for a status update on the 5th Street robbery. I have to look at her and act normal while my entire world is falling apart. I tell her the suspect has discovered the hidden employee and is now in direct communication. I report that he's agitated and has damaged additional property. My voice doesn't shake. I don't know how, but it doesn't. Miranda nods and makes notes on her tablet. She tells me good work keeping him talking. I want to scream at her that it's my husband. I want to tell someone, anyone, but the words won't come out. Through the phone, I hear sirens in the distance. They're getting closer. My husband hears them too. His breathing gets faster. He starts yelling at the hostages to get down on the floor. His voice is high and panicked now. I hear people crying. Someone is begging him not to shoot. Then I hear a metallic click that makes my stomach drop. He's checking his weapon, making sure it's loaded, making sure it's ready. I'm listening to my husband prepare to shoot people, and I still haven't told anyone who he is. The dispatcher coordinating the response leans over and asks if I have any identifying information about the suspect. I stare at my computer screen. I could end this right now. I could tell them his name, his address, what kind of car he drives, everything. But if I say it out loud, then it's real. If I tell them my husband is robbing a jewelry store, then my life is over. My marriage is over. Everything I thought I knew is a lie. The words stick in my throat like they're glued there. I shake my head at the dispatcher. She goes back to her station. My husband gets back on the phone. He demands to know exactly when police will arrive. His voice is tight like a rubber band about to snap. I check the response time and tell him approximately 2 minutes. He swears again. He says he needs more time. I hear him yelling at someone to hurry up. Metal scraping, keys rattling. He's trying to get into the safe. He's not planning to surrender. He's going to try to finish the robbery even with police outside. Miranda leans over my shoulder to listen to the call. She's so close I can smell her coffee. I feel exposed, like she can see right through me. Like she'll somehow know this is my husband. She pulls out a notepad and starts writing. She's documenting his speech patterns, the level of his agitation, how he's breathing. Every detail she writes down is about the man I married, the man I share a bed with, the man whose laundry I did this morning. She writes that he's highly unstable and likely to escalate. She writes that he may harm hostages. I sit there frozen while she documents my husband like he's just another criminal. Through the phone, I hear the first police cars pulling up outside the jewelry store. Tires on pavement, car doors slamming, radio chatter. My husband's breathing becomes rapid and shallow. He's panicking. He yells at someone to hurry up with the safe. His voice cracks. I hear metal scraping louder now. Someone is crying. The sound is constant and heartbreaking. A woman's voice keeps saying please over and over. The situation is seconds away from going very bad. People could die. My husband could kill them. Or police could kill him. I'm the only person in this room who knows the suspect's true identity. I'm the only one who could tell them about his gambling problem. About the bills I found hidden in his truck last month. About how he's been acting strange for weeks. Information that could help them negotiate with him. But I can't make myself say the words. I just sit here with my finger still hovering over the mute button, listening to my life fall apart in real time. His voice comes back through the phone, and it's different now. Harder and more desperate. He tells me to listen carefully and relay exactly what he says to whoever is in charge. He says if the police don't back off right now, he's going to start shooting people one at a time, starting with the girl who was hiding. His voice cracks on the last word, and I hear Ashley whimper in the background. My hands grip the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turn white, but my voice stays level when I speak. I tell him I'm listening, and I'll pass along his message. He says he wants all units to pull back to at least 2 blocks away, and he needs to see them leave. I'm writing this down on my notepad, even though I'll never forget a single word. He says if he sees any movement toward the building, he'll kill a hostage. The way he says it sounds practiced, like he's been rehearsing these lines. I signal frantically to Miranda, and she rushes over to my station. I scribble the demands on my notepad and slide it to her while keeping my voice calm on the phone. I tell him I'm relaying his message now and ask him to please stay calm. Miranda reads the note and her face goes pale. She grabs her radio and starts speaking rapidly to the officers on scene. I hear her telling them to establish a wide perimeter and pull patrol units back. She's using all the right words, following protocol for a barricade situation with hostages. My husband is still breathing hard in my ear. He asks if they're moving back yet, and I tell him yes. They're pulling back now. Everyone is following his instructions. Miranda comes back and writes on my notepad that SWAT has been activated and is en route. She asks if I can keep him talking for at least 20 minutes. I nod and take a shaky breath. I ask my husband what else he needs to resolve this situation safely. The words feel wrong in my mouth because I'm using the exact phrasing from our hostage negotiation training manual on the man who shares my bed. He says he needs a car, something fast, and he needs the police to guarantee him safe passage out of the city. I'm writing this down too, even though it's textbook movie robbery stuff. He has no real plan, just demands he's probably seen in some crime show. I tell him I'm working on getting him what he needs and ask him to tell me about the people inside with him. He says there are 3 employees left and they're all sitting on the floor where he can see them. I ask if anyone is hurt and needs medical help. There's a pause, and then he says one of the customers he let go earlier might have needed stitches. But everyone still inside is fine. My stomach twists because he's talking about hitting someone like it's no big deal. I ask him how he's feeling right now and what's going through his mind. This is straight from the de-escalation playbook, but it feels sick to use it on him. He actually answers, though. He says this wasn't supposed to go this way. Someone must have hit a silent alarm before he even got the safe open. He sounds frustrated and angry. I realize he's been planning this carefully. Probably for weeks, maybe months. While I was packing his lunch and doing his laundry, he was plotting an armed robbery. The man I thought I knew doesn't exist. He was always someone else. Someone capable of threatening to murder people for money. Victoria appears at my station carrying 2 cups of coffee. She sets one down next to me and immediately her eyes narrow. She mouths the words, "Are you okay?" And I shake my head slightly. I can't talk to her because I'm actively on this call, but my face must show something because she looks really worried. She stays close, hovering near my desk, and I'm grateful she's here even though I can't explain anything. My husband's voice changes and I hear the shift immediately. He's starting to understand that the police aren't just going to give him a car and let him drive away. He says they're lying to him, they're just stalling, and his voice is getting higher and tighter. He says if they don't give him what he wants in the next 10 minutes, he's going to shoot someone to prove he's serious. I can hear him moving around, his footsteps heavy on the floor. One of the employees starts crying louder and he yells at her to shut up. I'm listening to the man I love threaten to commit murder, and I have to keep my voice professional and calm. I make a hand signal to Miranda, tapping my temple and then making a downward spiral motion with my finger. It's our signal for suspect's mental state deteriorating. She sees it and nods, making notes on her tablet. I don't want him to hear me talking about him, so I'm using the hand signals we practiced in training. I keep my voice gentle and ask him to take some deep breaths with me. I tell him I know he's scared and feeling trapped, but we can work through this. He laughs and it sounds bitter and broken. Miranda leans over and writes on my notepad that their primary hostage negotiator is being called in and should arrive in 15 minutes. She writes that I need to keep him stable until then. I ask my husband if anyone needs medical attention, if everyone inside is okay. He says yeah, everyone is fine except for the one guy who has a cut on his head from earlier. My whole body goes rigid because he just casually mentioned assaulting someone. He hit a customer hard enough to cut their head open, and he's talking about it like it's nothing. I have to process that my husband is capable of violence while I'm actively trying to save the lives of his victims. I ask him to tell me more about what led to this situation. He starts talking about money problems and debt and feeling like he was drowning. He says he didn't know what else to do. He felt trapped with no way out. I'm hearing about struggles he never once mentioned to me in all our years together. We shared a bed every night and he never told me he was in trouble. I realize our entire marriage was him lying by omission, hiding this whole separate life from me. A man in a suit arrives at Miranda's desk and she brings him over to the station next to mine. He puts on a headset and starts listening to my call. This must be the negotiator. Miranda quietly fills him in on the situation, showing him her notes about the suspect's behavior and demands. I keep talking to my husband, asking him about his childhood and what he wanted to be when he grew up. These are standard de-escalation questions meant to humanize the suspect and build rapport. It feels horrible to use these techniques on my spouse. He actually opens up, though, talking about growing up poor and watching his mom work 3 jobs. He says he promised himself he'd never struggle like that. He says the debt just kept growing and he felt like he was failing at everything. I never knew he felt this way because he never told me. Victoria comes back with a bottle of water and sets it next to my coffee. She squeezes my shoulder gently, and I can feel how much she wants to ask what's wrong. The negotiator makes a hand signal that he's ready to take over the call. Miranda walks over and asks quietly if I need to transfer. I nod because I don't trust myself to keep doing this much longer. I'm reaching for the transfer button when my husband says something that makes me freeze. He says his wife is probably asleep at home right now with no idea what he's doing tonight. He sounds sad about it, almost wistful. He says she's a good person, and she deserves better than what he's put her through. I realize he's kept his criminal life completely separate from our marriage in his mind. I was just the normal life he came home to, the cover that made him look respectable. Our whole relationship was him using me without my knowledge or consent. My finger hovers over the transfer button, but I can't push it. Miranda is waiting for me to switch the call over to the negotiator, but something stops me. I tell her I think I've built enough rapport with the suspect that changing negotiators now might make him unstable. She looks uncertain, glancing between me and the negotiator. He nods slightly like he agrees it could be risky. Miranda tells me, okay, continue, but the specialist will coach me through it. I know I'm making this choice partly because I'm not ready to let go of this connection to my husband. This might be the last real conversation we ever have, and I can't hand him off to a stranger yet. The negotiator pulls his chair closer and starts writing suggestions on a notepad for me to follow. The negotiator's first note reads, ask about his emotional state, and I relay the question to my husband about how he's feeling right now. He goes quiet for a few seconds, and then his voice comes back different, less angry and more scared. He tells me he doesn't know how this got so out of control, that he just needed the money and now people are hurt, and police are everywhere. For a second, he sounds exactly like the man I thought I married, vulnerable and lost, and I feel this terrible pull to comfort him. I want to tell him it will be okay, even though I know it won't be, and I realize how deep my denial runs about who he really is. The negotiator writes another note telling me to acknowledge his feelings and keep him talking, so I tell my husband I understand he's scared, and that we can work through this together. Miranda suddenly appears next to me and taps her tablet screen, then writes on my notepad that SWAT is in position outside the store. She underlines the words hostage release and looks at me expectantly. I take a breath and ask my husband if he would consider letting some of the people go as a show of good faith. He asks what he gets in return, and I tell him police can pull back from the front entrance to give him some space. The negotiator nods approval at this offer. My husband actually agrees after a moment, saying he'll let the 2 customers go if the cops move their cars back. I feel this weird flicker of hope that maybe some part of the man I loved is still in there making rational choices. Miranda radios the officers outside, and I watch her coordinate the pullback on her tablet. My husband tells someone in the store to let the couple go, and I hear movement and a door opening on his end of the line. I pull up the security camera feed on one of my monitors and watch 2 people stumble out of the jewelry store looking absolutely scared out of their minds. They run toward the police cars and officers grab them and pull them to safety. My husband comes back on the line and asks if I saw them leave, and I confirm that yes, They're out safely. The negotiator makes a note on his pad that this is a positive sign, and Miranda looks cautiously hopeful for the first time tonight. But I know my husband's voice too well, and I can hear something underneath his words that they can't. He's not surrendering. He's buying time, and I realize he's planning something. His voice changes again over the next few minutes, becoming calmer and more focused, and the negotiator interprets this as progress in the negotiation. But I recognize this tone from when he's working through a problem, that dangerous kind of determination where he's made up his mind about something. He starts asking me specific questions about where the police cars are positioned and whether I can see the SWAT team from where I'm sitting. I realize with growing horror that he's gathering intelligence for an escape attempt. The negotiator writes, "Give vague answers" on his notepad, but I'm stuck trying to decide if I should give my husband accurate information that might help him get away, or lie to him and risk him doing something that gets the remaining hostages hurt. I tell him the police have the building surrounded and he should focus on coming out safely, trying to avoid giving him tactical details. While he's talking, I start noticing sounds in the background that seem familiar. I hear traffic patterns and what sounds like a delivery truck beeping as it backs up, and I suddenly recognize the area. My husband has mentioned 5th Street before when talking about his supposed delivery route for his trucking job. He's described this exact intersection multiple times over the past few months. I realize right then that he's been casing this jewelry store for weeks or maybe months while I thought he was working. Every single conversation we've had about his day has been a lie. Every detail about his job has been cover for planning robberies. The negotiator taps my shoulder and writes a question asking how many hostages remain inside. I relay this to my husband and he tells me there are still 3 employees including Ashley. His voice sounds tired now and he mentions that he never wanted anyone to get hurt. He just needed the money. I want to scream at him that we could have talked about money problems, that I would have helped him find another way, but instead I maintain my professional tone and tell him I understand he was in a difficult situation. Victoria appears at my station and slips me a folded note. I open it and read her asking if I want her to take over the call, because I've been on for over an hour now, and protocol says operators should rotate on high-stress calls. I shake my head and crumple the note in my fist, unable to explain to her that I can't let go of this call because it might be the last real conversation I ever have with my husband. She gives me this worried look but doesn't push the issue, just pulls a chair closer and sits down nearby in case I need her. My husband starts talking about his truck and mentions something about where he parked it 2 blocks away from the store. I suddenly remember him telling me last week that he needed to the park far from our apartment because of street cleaning on our block. I realize now that was a lie, and he was actually establishing his getaway vehicle for this robbery. He was planning this armed robbery while sleeping next to me at night. I think back over the past few months and I can see a dozen small lies and inconsistencies that I dismissed because I trusted him completely. Miranda's phone buzzes and she steps away to take the call, and when she comes back her face has changed. She's received word that they've identified the suspect's vehicle and are moving units to secure it. I watch her process this information and I know exactly what's happening. They're going to run the license plates and discover the vehicle is registered to my husband. In just a few minutes, everyone in this room will know that I've been negotiating with my own spouse and my career will be over. The negotiator notices my hands shaking badly enough that I'm having trouble holding my pen. He leans over and asks Miranda quietly if I need to be relieved from the call. I shake my head and refuse to transfer it even though I probably should. My husband is talking about his childhood now, telling me how his father left when he was young and he swore he would never be poor like his mother was. I'm hearing his origin story like we're on a first date, learning these fundamental things about the man I married for the first time. I realize I never really knew him at all. Miranda's phone buzzes against the desk and she picks it up, glancing at the screen before standing and walking toward the hallway. I watch her go while keeping my voice steady on the call with my husband, asking him more questions about the hostages to keep him calm. My hands won't stop shaking and I grip the edge of my desk to steady them. The negotiator sitting next to me writes something on his notepad, but I can't focus on it because I'm watching the hallway where Miranda disappeared. She's getting the information about the vehicle owner right now. In maybe 30 seconds, everyone in this building will know I've been negotiating with my own husband for over an hour without telling anyone. My chest feels tight and I realize I'm not breathing properly, so I force myself to take slow breaths while my husband talks about how scared he is. Miranda comes back into view and her face looks different. She's trying to keep it neutral and professional, but I see the shock in her eyes when she looks directly at me. She walks over to my station and her hand moves in a gesture telling me to mute the call. My finger hovers over the mute button and my heart is pounding, so hard I can feel it in my throat. I press the button and suddenly I can't hear my husband anymore, just the ambient noise of the dispatch center around me. Miranda leans down close to me and asks very quietly if I know the suspect. Her voice is careful and controlled. I open my mouth but nothing comes out at first. I can't lie to her anymore. I whisper that the robber is my husband. I watch her face change as the words register. First there's disbelief like she thinks she heard wrong, then shock as she realizes I'm serious. Then professional concern takes over and she straightens up and signals across the room. The shift supervisor looks over and she makes a gesture for him to come immediately. The negotiator next to me has heard what I said, and he's staring at me with his mouth slightly open. I know what's happening. My career is about to implode along with my marriage. Everything I've built is falling apart in real time while I sit here at my workstation with my husband on hold. The shift supervisor arrives within seconds and Miranda pulls him aside. She's speaking quietly, but I can see her gesturing toward me and then toward the phone system. He looks at me with this expression of complete shock. They talk for maybe 20 seconds, and then he walks over to my station. He tells me I need to transfer the call immediately to the primary negotiator and report to the break room. His voice is firm, but not angry. I shake my head and tell him I can't do that. I'm begging now. I explain that my husband trusts my voice, and if we switch negotiators right now when he's already unstable, it could trigger violence. The supervisor looks at Miranda and then at the negotiator. They have this silent conversation with their eyes. The negotiator says something about rapport and crisis points. After what feels like forever, the supervisor nods slowly. He says I can continue, but only with direct supervision, and the negotiator will be coaching every word I say. I nod and reach for the mute button. Nope. My husband's voice comes back and he's asking if I'm still there, sounding worried. I tell him I'm here and everything is okay. My voice sounds almost normal even though I'm falling apart inside. The negotiator slides his chair right next to mine and puts his headset on so he can hear both sides of the conversation. He's not looking at me like a colleague anymore. He's looking at me like I'm a tool he needs to use carefully. He writes on his notepad in clear block letters and holds it up for me to read. I'm supposed to relay his exact words to my husband about surrendering peacefully and trusting the legal process. I repeat the words into my headset and my husband laughs. It's this bitter, hollow sound that makes my stomach hurt. He says the system doesn't care about people like him. His voice is full of resentment and anger that I never heard before in all our years together. I realize he's been carrying this rage around, and I never saw it because I was too comfortable in our middle-class life to notice his struggles. He talks about how the system is rigged for people with money and connections, and people like him just get crushed. I'm hearing this whole worldview that he apparently has that he never shared with me. The negotiator is writing more instructions, but I'm trying to process that my husband has been angry and bitter for who knows how long, and I had no idea. My husband asks me a direct question. He wants to know if I think he should trust the police. The negotiator writes, yes, safest option on his notepad, but I'm stuck between my role as negotiator and my personal knowledge of my husband. I tell him honestly that surrendering is his best chance at survival and eventually returning to his life. He goes quiet for a long moment and I can hear him breathing. Then he asks me what kind of life he'd be returning to after this. I don't have an answer. The negotiator is writing something else, but I can't respond to my husband's question because I don't know what his life will look like. Prison for years, probably. Divorce, definitely. No job, no home. I stay silent and he doesn't push for an answer. Victoria appears at my station with someone I don't recognize. It's a man in a suit who identifies himself quietly as the union representative. He leans down and informs me in a low voice that I'm being placed on administrative leave pending investigation of my conduct during this call. I nod to show I understand while keeping my husband talking about his fears and regrets. The union rep is explaining my rights and what the investigation process will look like, but I'm only half listening. I realize I'm about to lose everything. My marriage is destroyed. My career might be over. I might even face criminal charges if they decide I compromised the response by not immediately disclosing his identity. The union rep hands me a business card and tells me to call him tomorrow. Victoria squeezes my shoulder and I can see she's trying not to cry. My husband is still talking on the phone about how he never meant for things to go this far. My husband asks me another question and it stops my heart. He wants to know if I have family, if there's someone at home who cares about me. He's trying to connect with me as a human being. I tell him yes, I have people who care about me. He says that's good because everyone should have that. His voice sounds genuinely glad that I'm not alone. I'm sitting here talking to my husband about whether I have family, and he doesn't know he's my family. The irony is so painful I can barely breathe. He's asking about my support system while he destroys both our lives. The negotiator writes another instruction, and I realize we're running out of time. The negotiator holds up his notepad with clear instructions. I need to try once more to get my husband to surrender. He writes that this is his last chance before SWAT moves in. I relay the message as gently as I can. My husband goes very quiet on the line. I can hear him breathing heavily like he's trying to make a decision. He asks how much time he has. I tell him honestly that the tactical team will breach in about 5 minutes if he doesn't come out. The negotiator nods approval that I gave him accurate information. My husband makes this sound like he's thinking hard. I wait, and the seconds feel like hours. My husband tells me he's going to let the last hostages go. I feel this wave of relief crash over me mixed with dread about what comes next. The negotiator signals to Miranda, who relays this to the officers on scene. I'm watching the security feed on one of the monitors, and I see the jewelry store door open. Ashley runs out first, then the other 2 employees. They're running toward the police cars with their hands up. My husband is alone inside now. The negotiator writes on his notepad that this is positive and suggests my husband is preparing to surrender. I look at the screen showing the empty store and I know him better than that. This isn't surrender. This is him clearing the space of witnesses. I make a decision that will define everything that follows. I tell the negotiator and Miranda that I think my husband is planning suicide by cop based on his tone and word choices. I recommend they hold SWAT back and let me try to talk him down. Miranda looks at me and I can see she's torn between protocol and trusting my judgment. The shift supervisor hears what I said and immediately shakes his head. He says absolutely not. I'm told to make one final surrender appeal and then I'm done. The negotiator will take over after that. I look at the screen showing my husband alone in that jewelry store, and I know I'm about to lose him forever. I force myself to speak clearly into the phone even though my voice wants to break. I tell him I know he's scared and feels trapped, but his life has value and people will be hurt if he dies today. He laughs and it sounds so sad and broken. He says nobody will miss him. He's just another screw-up who couldn't make it work. I want to scream that I'll miss him, that I love him despite everything. But instead I tell him that everyone's life matters and he deserves a chance to make this right. There's silence on the line and I can hear him breathing hard. The negotiator is writing something on his notepad, but I can't look away from the security monitor showing the empty jewelry store. My husband asks me a question that makes my heart stop. He wants to know my name. I freeze completely because I can't tell him the truth, but I also can't lie in this moment. My mouth opens and closes and no sound comes out for several seconds. Miranda is watching me closely and I see concern on her face. I finally manage to speak and tell him my name is the same as his wife's name. There's a long silence on the line and I hear his breathing change. He asks me to repeat it and his voice sounds strange now. I say my name again clearly and I hear him make this choking sound. I can hear him putting pieces together in real time. He says my name again, but this time it's a question, and I know he's recognized my voice after an hour of talking to me. I hear him make a sound like someone punched him in the stomach. He whispers, "Oh God, it's you," and his voice is filled with horror and shame. I tell him yes, it's me, and my voice breaks completely. We're both crying on the phone and everyone in the dispatch center is watching this happen. Miranda's hand covers her mouth and Victoria has tears running down her face. The negotiator looks uncomfortable, but he keeps writing instructions. My husband starts talking fast and everything comes out in a rush. He's apologizing and explaining and begging me to understand. He tells me about gambling debts that spiraled out of control and loan sharks who threatened to hurt us both. He says he owed them $30,000 and they were going to kill him if he didn't pay. I'm listening to him describe danger I've been in without knowing, and I feel sick. He says he was trying to protect me by keeping me ignorant of everything. He never meant for me to find out this way, and he's so sorry. He keeps saying he's sorry over and over. I ask him directly if he loves me, and there's a pause. He says yes more than anything, which is why he couldn't tell me he'd failed us financially. His voice cracks when he says he couldn't face disappointing me. I tell him that love means trust and honesty, and he's destroyed both by lying to me for months or maybe years. I'm crying so hard I can barely speak, but I force the words out. He agrees and says he knows I'll never forgive him. I realize I don't know if I will or not because I'm still processing that this is real. The shift supervisor appears next to Miranda, and he's holding up 2 fingers. He tells me I have 2 minutes to get my husband to surrender before SWAT breaches the building. I beg my husband to come out with his hands up. My voice is desperate and raw. He asks me if I'll visit him in prison, and I tell him honestly that I don't know. I tell him I know I want him to live, though. He says that's enough for now, and his voice sounds calmer. He tells me he's going to put the gun down and walk out. I watch the security feed on the monitor, and my hands are shaking. The jewelry store door opens slowly, and my husband steps out with his hands raised high above his head. SWAT officers swarm him immediately from multiple directions. They force him to the ground hard, and I see his face hit the pavement. Someone puts a knee on his back and yanks his arms behind him. The handcuffs go on, and they're pulling him up roughly. I see his face on the camera for just a moment before they turn him away. He looks broken and defeated and older than I remember. They're loading him into a police car, and I feel absolutely nothing but numbness. Miranda gently takes my headset off, and her hands are warm on mine. She tells me I did everything right and saved lives tonight, including my husband's life. The union representative is suddenly at my station, and I didn't even see him approach. He escorts me toward the break room with his hand on my elbow. He explains that I'll be on paid leave while they investigate whether I should have disclosed the relationship sooner. I nod mechanically because I can't process what he's saying. Victoria brings me coffee in the break room and sets it in front of me. The cup is warm, but I can't seem to make my hands pick it up. Victoria sits next to me and doesn't say anything, and I'm grateful because I have no words. A man in a suit arrives about 20 minutes later and introduces himself as Detective Raymond Hines. He's older with gray hair and kind eyes that don't match his serious expression. He sits across from me at the break room table and pulls out a notebook. He tells me he's been assigned to the robbery case and needs to interview me about my husband and our relationship. I tell him everything I know, which turns out to be almost nothing useful. Our finances, my husband's activities, whether I noticed anything suspicious. I have to admit I was completely blind to all of it. Detective Hines is surprisingly gentle as he asks his questions. He doesn't make me feel stupid even though I feel incredibly stupid. I describe our marriage as normal and stable and realize how absurd that sounds now. He asks about my husband's work schedule and friends and habits. I answer, but every answer reveals how little I actually knew. Detective Hines closes his notebook and looks at me with something like sympathy. He tells me they'll need to search our apartment for evidence, and I realize my home is now a crime scene. The place where I sleep and eat and live is going to be torn apart by strangers. He offers to have an officer escort me to collect essential items before they execute the search warrant. I agree numbly because I need clothes and my phone charger and I don't know what else. Victoria immediately says she'll come with me, and I accept, because I can't face going home alone. Going home to the life I thought I had but never really existed. The police officer drives us to my apartment in his patrol car, and Victoria follows in her own vehicle. I sit in the back seat behind the metal divider and stare at the buildings passing by. Everything looks different now, like I'm seeing the city through someone else's eyes. The officer parks in front of my building and opens my door. I climb out slowly because my legs feel weak and unsteady. Victoria pulls up next to us and gets out quickly. She walks over and takes my arm to help me toward the entrance. The officer follows behind us with his hand resting on his belt. We take the elevator up to the 3rd floor and I fish my keys out of my purse with shaking fingers. The key turns in the lock and the door swings open. Walking into my apartment feels like entering a stranger's home. The familiar furniture and decorations look foreign and wrong. I see my husband's laptop sitting open on the desk in the corner. I wonder what criminal plans are stored on that hard drive. I wonder how many hours he spent researching how to rob a jewelry store while I was at work. The officer asks me to show him where I need to get my things. I nod and walk toward the bedroom. Victoria stays close beside me. I see my husband's jacket hanging by the door and I stop walking. I remember him putting that jacket on before he kissed me goodbye at the start of my shift. He told me to have a good night at work. He smiled at me. That kiss was him saying goodbye before going to commit armed robbery. The officer clears his throat and I start moving again. In the bedroom, I pull a duffel bag from the closet and start throwing clothes into it. I grab underwear and socks from the dresser. I take jeans and shirts from hangers. The officer stands in the doorway watching to make sure I don't tamper with evidence. Everything I touch might be evidence now. My whole life is evidence. Victoria goes into the bathroom and comes back with my toiletries in a plastic bag. She sets it on the bed next to my duffel. She asks me what else I need. I tell her I need my important papers from the filing cabinet. We go back to the living room and Victoria opens the cabinet while the officer watches. She pulls out folders with my birth certificate and insurance papers and tax returns. Then she opens my husband's desk drawer looking for more documents. Her hand stops moving and she goes very still. She pulls out a thick stack of envelopes and her face changes. She holds them up and I see their bills. Red stamped notices cover the fronts. Second notice, third notice, final warning. Victoria spreads them out on the desk and I see credit card bills I didn't know existed. The balances are huge. Thousands and thousands of dollars on cards in my husband's name. There are overdue notices for loans I never heard about. Payment plans for debts I didn't know we had. I pick up one of the credit card statements and scan the charges. Casino cash advances, online gambling sites, sports betting accounts. The financial pressure he was under hits me like a physical blow. He never shared any of this with me. He never told me we were drowning in debt. I see another envelope from a collections agency demanding payment for $12,000. I realize our finances are probably destroyed, and I'll be dealing with this mess for years. Victoria puts her hand on my shoulder and squeezes gently. The officer asks if I'm ready to go. I stuff the bills into my duffel bag because I'll need them for the divorce lawyer. I take one last look around the apartment. This place held my marriage and my normal life, and now it's just a crime scene. We leave and the officer locks the door behind us. He tells me the forensics team will be here in an hour to search everything. Victoria drives me to her apartment across town. I sit in the passenger seat and watch the familiar streets pass by. She doesn't try to make conversation. She just drives and lets me sit in silence. We pull into her parking lot and she helps me carry my bag upstairs. Her apartment is small and cozy with plants on every surface. She sets me up in her spare room that she uses for storage. She moves boxes out of the way and makes up the futon with clean sheets. She brings me water and tells me I can stay as long as I need. Then I finally break down completely. The sobs come from somewhere deep in my chest and I can't stop them. I cry so hard I can't breathe. Victoria sits next to me on the futon and pulls me against her shoulder. She holds me while I fall apart. I sob for hours. I can't articulate whether I'm crying for my marriage or my career or my safety or my shattered sense of reality. Maybe I'm crying for all of it at once. Victoria doesn't try to make me talk or tell me it will be okay. She just stays with me and rubs my back. Eventually, I run out of tears. I feel exhausted and empty and wrung out. Victoria helps me change into pajamas and tucks me into bed like I'm a child. I fall asleep immediately. When I wake up the next morning, the sun is streaming through the window. I reach for my phone on the nightstand and see the screen is full of notifications. Dozens of missed calls and texts from family and friends. I scroll through them with growing dread. Everyone has seen the news about the robbery and arrest. My mother called 6 times. My sister sent 10 texts asking if I'm okay. Friends from high school are messaging me. Co-workers from my old job before dispatch are reaching out. Everyone wants to know if I'm safe. My mother calls again while I'm staring at the phone. I answer, and her voice comes through frantic and scared, asking if I'm safe. I tell her yes, I'm safe. There's a long pause. She asks where I am and if the news reports are true. I have to explain that yes, the reports are true, and my husband is the one who was arrested. The silence on the line is so complete I think the call dropped. Then I hear her start crying. She says she's coming to stay with me right away. I tell her I'm at Victoria's apartment and give her the address. She says she'll be there in 2 hours. I hang up and more calls come through. I let most of them go to voicemail because I can't handle explaining this story over and over. 9. Victoria knocks on the door and brings me coffee and toast. I thank her, but I can't eat. My phone rings again, and this time it's Detective Hines. I answer, and his voice is gentle. He tells me they finished searching the apartment. They found extensive evidence of planning. Surveillance photos of the jewelry store taken from different angles. Notes about the security system and camera positions. Schedules showing when guards change shifts. Maps of the area with escape routes marked. My husband had been planning this robbery for months. Detective Hines says they also found evidence of the gambling debts and the people he owed money to. He tells me gently that my husband has been charged with armed robbery and kidnapping and assault. He's being held without bail because he's considered a flight risk. I ask if I can see him. Detective Hines goes quiet for a moment, then he tells me he wouldn't recommend it, but it's my choice. He says he can arrange a visit at the county jail if that's what I want. I tell him yes, I need to see my husband face to face. I need to try to understand how this happened. He says he'll set it up for tomorrow afternoon. After I hang up, Victoria comes in and sits on the bed. She asks if I'm sure about visiting him. I tell her I need closure or answers or something. My mother arrives an hour later with 2 suitcases and immediately wraps me in a hug. She's crying and telling me how scared she was. Victoria makes us all lunch that nobody eats. My mother and Victoria both try to talk me out of visiting my husband at the jail. They say he doesn't deserve to see me after what he did. But I need to hear the full story from him. I need to look him in the eye and ask him why. The next day, Detective Hines picks me up and drives me to the county jail. The building is gray concrete and barbed wire. We go through security and I have to put all my belongings in a locker. A guard escorts me to the visiting room. The room has rows of chairs facing windows with phones attached to the wall. I sit down in the chair the guard points to. I wait. Then a door opens on the other side of the glass and my husband walks in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looks smaller and older than I remember. His face is pale and he has dark circles under his eyes. He sits down across from me and picks up the phone. He can't meet my eyes. I pick up my phone and we stare at each other through the glass. He starts talking and the full story comes out. He tells me about the gambling addiction that started years ago. It began with casual bets on football games with friends. Then he started going to the casino after work. Then online poker. It spiraled out of control so fast he didn't see it happening. He borrowed money from dangerous people to cover his losses. He kept gambling thinking he could win it back. The debts got bigger and bigger. The people he owed money to started making threats. They told him they knew where I worked and when I got home. They said they'd hurt me if he didn't pay them back. He was terrified and desperate. He says robbing the jewelry store was supposed to clear his debts and save us both. He never imagined I'd be the one who answered the call. His voice breaks when he says it. I ask him why he didn't just tell me the truth and ask for help. He says he was ashamed. He was afraid I'd leave him if I knew how badly he'd screwed up. I tell him that by lying he guaranteed I'd leave him. He nods and says he knows that now. He asks if there's any chance I could forgive him someday. I tell him honestly that I don't know. Right now I need to focus on surviving this. He says he understands. The guard tells us time is up. My husband puts his hand against the glass. I don't put mine up to meet it. I hang up the phone and walk out. Detective Hines drives me back to Victoria's apartment. My mother is waiting with the name of a divorce attorney she found. The next morning, I call Neil Ackerman's office and make an appointment. I meet with him that afternoon in his office downtown. Neil is in his 50s with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. He asks me questions about my marriage and finances and my husband's debts. He explains that I need to legally separate my finances from my husband's immediately to protect myself. The debts are in his name only, which is good. But I need to close any joint accounts and remove my name from anything connected to him. Neil helps me file for divorce. We start the process of taking apart my shared life piece by piece. I sign papers dissolving a marriage I thought was real. Neil is practical and efficient. He doesn't offer sympathy or ask how I'm feeling. I appreciate that because I can't handle people being kind to me right now. Over the next 2 weeks, I move through my days in a fog. I stay at Victoria's apartment. My mother hovers and tries to take care of me. I meet with Neil twice more to sign more papers. I close our joint bank account and open a new one in just my name. I change all my passwords. I notify credit agencies. I start building a wall between my life and my husband's. Then Miranda calls. She tells me the investigation into my conduct during the call has concluded. The review board met and examined all the recordings and reports. They determined that I acted professionally and appropriately throughout the incident. They found that disclosing the relationship immediately might have actually put the hostages in more danger by making the situation unstable. The board cleared me of any wrongdoing. Miranda says I'm reinstated with full pay and benefits. I can come back to work whenever I'm ready. I thank her, but I tell her I'm not sure I can go back to that job. She says she understands and the door is open if I change my mind. I hang up and sit on Victoria's couch staring at nothing. The next week, I make an appointment with Audrey Carroll, a therapist who works with people dealing with trauma. Her office is in a quiet building downtown with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. I sit across from her and try to explain what happened, but the words come out jumbled and wrong. She listens without interrupting and then tells me something that helps. She says my shock and numbness are completely normal responses to what I went through. She explains that I'm not just losing my marriage, I'm losing my sense of safety and my trust in my own judgment all at the same time. Audrey teaches me breathing exercises for when panic hits, and ways to handle the awful thoughts that pop into my head at random times. Over the next few weeks, I see her twice a week, and slowly, very slowly, I start to feel a little bit steadier. I can get through whole hours without falling apart. I can sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. It's not much, but it's something. Neil calls 6 weeks after that jail visit to tell me my husband is taking a plea deal. He's pleading guilty to all the charges in exchange for 12 years instead of going to trial where he might get 20. Neil asks if I want to attend the sentencing hearing, and I say yes because I need to hear what my husband has to say. The hearing is on a Thursday morning in a gray courthouse downtown. I sit in the back row with my mother on one side and Victoria on the other. My husband is brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He looks thin and pale. The judge asks if he wants to make a statement before sentencing. My husband stands up and his voice shakes as he apologizes to the victims and to me. He says he takes full responsibility for destroying our lives, and he's sorry for the pain he caused. The judge sentences him to 12 years in state prison. Guards lead my husband away in chains, and he glances back at me once before disappearing through a door. I realize this is probably the last time I'll see him for many years, and I feel nothing but empty. 2 days after the sentencing, my phone rings with a number I don't know. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. A woman's voice says hello and asks if this is me. I say yes, and she tells me her name is Ashley. It takes me a second to place the name, and then I remember. She's the employee who hid in the office during the robbery. Ashley says she wanted to thank me for keeping her calm that night, and for saving her life. She asks if I'd be willing to meet for coffee, and I agree, even though I'm nervous about it. We meet at a small cafe the next afternoon. Ashley is younger than I expected, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She tells me about her nightmares and how she's scared to go back to work at any jewelry store. She's seeing a therapist too and taking medicine for anxiety. I share a little bit about what I'm going through, and she listens. Then she says something I really need to hear. She tells me she doesn't blame me for what my husband did. She says I saved her life that night by staying calm and professional, even though my world was falling apart. Hearing that from one of his victims helps ease some of the guilt I've been carrying around. After meeting with Ashley, I realize I need to make a decision about my job. Miranda has been calling every few days to check on me and asking when I might come back. I sit at Victoria's kitchen table one morning and admit out loud what I've been thinking for weeks. I can't go back to that job. Every time I think about putting on that headset, I feel sick. Every time I imagine sitting in that chair, I see my husband's face and hear his voice screaming through the phone. The job is connected to the worst night of my life, and I can't separate them anymore. I call Miranda and tell her I'm resigning. There's a long pause, and then she says she understands. She tells me I was one of the best operators she ever worked with, and she'll write me any recommendation letter I need. Victoria cries when I tell her, but she says she supports my choice. She knows I need a completely fresh start away from everything connected to my old life. 3 months after the robbery, I sign a lease on a small apartment across town. It's a 1-bedroom in an older building, but it's mine and mine alone. I paint the walls light blue and buy cheap furniture from a thrift store. My mother helps me move boxes and hang curtains. It feels good to have my own space again. Around the same time, I start a new job doing office work at a nonprofit that helps crime victims. The work involves answering phones and helping people fill out paperwork and connecting them with lawyers and counselors. It feels good to use my crisis management skills without the trauma triggers of emergency dispatch. My new coworkers are nice and they don't know my story. Nobody asks me about my past or why I left my last job. I appreciate the anonymity and the chance to start over. I keep seeing Audrey every week, and the therapy sessions help more than I expected. We work on rebuilding my sense of self separate from being a wife. For years, I defined myself partly through my marriage, and now that's gone. Audrey helps me see that I'm not responsible for my husband's choices. She tells me that being lied to and tricked doesn't make me stupid or weak. It just makes me human and trusting. Some days I actually believe her. Some days I wake up and feel okay about my future. I start going to the gym and taking a painting class on weekends. Small things that are just for me. 6 months after that terrible night, my mother convinces me to try dating again. Victoria sets me up with a friend of a friend, and we meet for dinner at a casual restaurant. His name is Dennis, and he works in IT, and he's perfectly nice. The date is awkward because I'm rusty at this, and I'm not ready for anything serious. But it feels good to try. It feels good to sit across from someone and have a normal conversation about normal things like movies and weekend plans. Dennis asks if he can see me again, and I say maybe. I need to take things slow. My mother and Victoria are so excited when I tell them about the date. They act like I just won the lottery. I realize I have people who truly love me and want good things for me. That matters more than I knew. I'm at work on a Tuesday afternoon helping a woman who left her husband after years of abuse. She's scared and confused and doesn't know how to navigate the legal system. I walk her through the process of getting a protection order and connect her with a lawyer who does free consultations. As I'm explaining everything to her, I realize something. I've found purpose in my pain. I'm genuinely helping people who understand what betrayal and loss feel like. My life looks nothing like I planned 6 months ago. I thought I'd be married and working at Dispatch and living in my old apartment. Instead, I'm divorced and working at a nonprofit and living alone across town. I still have hard days where I grieve what I thought I had. I still have moments where I'm angry at my husband for lying to me. But I'm building something real and honest now. I'm not the same person who answered that call 6 months ago. I'm not as naive or trusting. I'm more careful about who I let into my life. But I'm also stronger and more sure of who I am. I wish I hadn't learned these lessons this way. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is keep moving forward and help other people do the same.